your neighborhood lists, whatever number of neighborhoods you have, some of you have 8, 10, 12, 14 neighborhoods, these essential key building blocks are the best possible method you can use to approaching the personalization of your work, just as Bella did, as I suggested. And each pass through the scene that she was rehearsing, she would pass it through once from each of her neighborhoods. For example, Mai might do a pass through a piece from worried. She might do a pass through from intellectual. She might do a pass through from kind-hearted. She might do a pass through from maternal, whatever those neighborhoods were. Can't remember all. Now, as Bella pointed out, you do that, and you're going to learn lines more easily than you ever learned any other way, because now the lines are getting attached to elements of you because you're using neighborhoods to characterize each pass-through, and the way that you say the line is now attached to that element of you, and you'll just learn your lines very much faster than you do any other way. So that's a nice little benefit. But the other thing that happens is, each time you pass through one of those distinct neighborhoods of yourself, that piece is going to take a very distinct move in that direction. And by the time you work it through all your neighborhoods, you're not only going to have it down word for word, but all of these various pieces of you are going to converge in a reading that's going to have a little of your worry and a little of this and a little of that, and that's going to mean that it's about as highly personalized as you can get it, and all you've done is read through. You haven't sat down and analyzed what risks can I take, you know, what's the deep psychological realities of the character, all of which is worthy work to do, but generally the writer has taken care of that kind of stuff. What they're looking to you to do is to do what only an actor can do, which is create a presence, a moment, the reality of that thing in the moment, as Sandy Meisner coined a phrase to catch. That's what we want to be able to do, is personalize these pieces of things so the audience goes, this is really happening. Just like as you watch this, you go, is he reading dialogue? Is he really talking? Was that really Jean-Claude breaking down, or is that him just acting like he's breaking? And pretty soon you're just watching to go, I think I'm seeing some real stuff here, and you can't take your eyes off of that, when in a movie you're going, I think maybe this is real going on. I had that experience in District 9, and that wonderful South African actor that played the lead in that. There were moments where I went, is this guy acting, or have we just crossed over here? And of course, because of the way that particular movie is shot and created, it creates that reality thing anyway, as many of our movies do now. So your neighborhoods will just do that. They'll just give you this personalized journey through a piece of literature that allows you to see yourself by element by element by element going through that. And it's what I suggest you all do, and it's the fast way, the trick to personalizing anything that you get handed, from the most boring, banal kind of commercial copy to 2.5-page monologues that, you know, ask for extraordinary effort from you. Now, if that particular piece of literature calls for an extreme performance, it calls for an exaggerated performance, and some do, and those are the ones I was talking about earlier that are really fun to play with. If it calls for that, then you have that intriguing list that you get to go look at the extremes of. They're right there. Other people go, how am I going to be, you know, other actors, what's the brave, risky choice I can take? They're doing all this intellectualizing. You have a list. You have a pure list. You can go work from this in a practical manner. So what I did, just to illustrate how this might work, is I took a neighborhood that belongs to some of you in here, you probably have it, but I just picked a word. The word that I picked was compassionate. And I'm going to read you what came up on our research program that taps into several thesauruses and gives kind of a wide-ranging group of synonyms. You all had this experience when you were doing your homework. I'm just going to read you some, a group, quite a few, synonyms for compassionate. Here they are. Accepting, acute, admissive, adolescent, all heart, allergic, amiable, anaphylactic, aware, bleeding, bleeding heart, blooming, blossoming, broadening, broad-minded, budding, burgeoning, cathartic, commiserative, compassionate, condolent, condoning, conscious, cosmopolitan, courteous, delicate, dispassionate, doleful, empathetic, empathic, enlightening, exorable, exquisite, fast-growing, flourishing, flowering, forbearant, free-thinking, generous, gentle, goosey, hands-off, humane, humanitarian, philanthropic, hyperesthetic, hyperpathic, hypersensitive, impressionable, indulgent, itchy, kinesthetic, lenient, liberal, liberalizing, liberating, long-suffering, magnanimous, melting, merciful, mild, mild as milk, mild-mannered, neutral, objective, big old softy, one's heart is bleeding, open, open-minded, over-permissive, over-refined, over-sensible, over-sensitive, patient, perceptive, permissive, persuadable, and that's where my printer ran out. So we didn't get past the P's, so obviously there's a little more alphabet to go. Quite a few synonyms. Some of you probably went, gee, I never thought of that being related to compassion. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay? Now, in there are some extremes. I just highlighted some that seemed extreme to me. These are sort of extreme ways to use compassionate. Adolescent, that's sort of an extreme. And I want you to think about a role. Suppose compassionate is one of your neighborhoods. You've got some role, and you're thinking, how can I, because this role calls for some extremes, let me look at some extremes of a neighborhood of mine that I might lend to this. So, to play it adolescent, might be a pass worth taking through it. To play it all heart might be a pass. To play a bleeding heart, pass through it. To play a courteous, pass through it. To do a doleful, I love that word, doleful. An enlightening pass through it. A hands-off pass through it. An indulgent pass through it. I'm just the ones that seemed extreme to me. A long-suffering pass through it. A mild as milk pass through it. An over-permissive pass through it. An oversensitive pass through it. If you take just one neighborhood, look for the extremes in that neighborhood, and let yourself go, what happens if I do this entire little piece here, mild as milk? What happens if I do this entire piece, a pass that is long-suffering? What if I, first of all, I guarantee you that if you rehearse and you really go, what is it when I'm oversensitive? And you really say, how do I lend my oversensitivity to every line? Gee, I know I'm compassionate. I don't really think of myself as oversensitive. Have I ever been oversensitive? Oh yeah, there was that one time. And then you begin to recall that stuff, let that guide it pass through, and all of a sudden you're going to have a fairly extreme version of this thing. Now, it is just one version based on one neighborhood, but it's extreme. So then you might go to an entirely different neighborhood and go, what are the most extreme words in that neighborhood? And give yourself a pass through with that. If you do that for an hour, you are going to have a so much more dynamic play with that literature than you will have any other way by trying to intellectualize what would be a brave choice, what would be some wacky risk, what could I do analytically. If you let yourself just push in extreme directions of yourself based on your neighborhoods, what you are eventually going to come up with when you have rehearsed that way with yourself after an hour is a version that will be so whack-ball and extreme that you won't even know that it was possible coming out of you when you started. That's where you'll end up. And I think it is the only way to give extreme performances that aren't just simply exaggerated.